One of the most notable characteristics that set Adolf Hitler apart was his unparalleled ability to captivate audiences through a series of meticulously organized public speeches and mass events. Throughout his political career, Hitler harnessed the power of oratory to an unprecedented extent, utilizing his charisma and persuasive skills to sway the masses. His speeches were not merely political addresses but grand spectacles that left an indelible mark on history. Hitler recognized the potency of effective communication and understood that words could be used as a formidable tool to mold public opinion. Whether addressing a small gathering or a massive crowd, he had an innate talent for tailoring his message to resonate with diverse audiences. His speeches were carefully crafted to evoke emotional responses, tapping into the hopes, fears, and frustrations of the people he sought to influence. Beyond their rhetorical impact, Hitler's mass events were meticulously staged and choreographed with precision to create a sense of unity and purpose among his followers. The grandiosity of these gatherings served not only to bolster his image but also to instill a sense of belonging and allegiance among the attendees. The use of symbolism, carefully chosen venues, and meticulous attention to detail all played a role in creating an atmosphere that reinforced the ideology he sought to promote. As the German armies faced defeats on all fronts, particularly after 1943, the once omnipresent figure of Hitler began to retreat from the public eye, marking a stark contrast to the earlier years of his political career. Hitler's diminishing public appearances reflected the changing fortunes of the Third Reich. The charismatic orator, who had once held sway over massive crowds, found himself grappling with the harsh reality of military setbacks and the waning support of the German people. The decline in his public speeches mirrored the decline of the German war machine itself. The shift in Hitler's public engagements can be attributed in part to the strategic challenges Germany faced on the battlefield. As the tide turned against the Axis powers, Hitler's focus shifted from grandiose mass events to more secluded and controlled settings. The decline in public appearances wasn't merely a result of military defeats. It was a calculated response to the changing dynamics of the war. The July 20th, 1944 assassination attempt on Hitler marked a critical juncture in his public appearances. Following the failed attack, Hitler was compelled to make a rare appearance before cameras to confirm his survival, not only to dispel rumours but also to reassert his determination to win the war. This event, captured on film, showcased a leader undeterred by the threat to his life and served as a moment of propaganda to reinforce the image of an invincible leader. However, in the aftermath of the July 20th plot, Hitler's public visibility underwent another transformation. While he made this defiant appearance, he subsequently withdrew from the public eye for an extended period, choosing a more discreet approach to leadership. The failed assassination had not only physically wounded Hitler, but also seemed to impact his perception of the public sphere. Before delving into the last visit of Hitler, it's crucial to understand the context of his movements during this tumultuous period. Following the July 20th, 1944 assassination attempt, Hitler's life and leadership took on a nomadic character, shaped by crises on various fronts and persistent health issues. This period of constant relocation mirrored the declining fortunes of Germany. Hitler's itinerant existence began with frequent changes of residence driven by both military crises and personal health concerns. In August 1944, he underwent a throat operation in Berlin, highlighting the toll that stress and the rigors of leadership had taken on his well-being. After recovering, he left his favoured Alpine residence on October 16, 1944, and, significantly, never returned. The shift in Hitler's headquarters continued as the Eastern Front faced the imminent threat of Soviet forces. The Wolf's Den barracks in East Prussia became a temporary refuge but had to be evacuated by November due to the advancing Red Army. The defensive line on the Vistula River's banks became the next outpost, marking a further retreat. Hitler's constant repositioning reflected not only the military exigencies, but also a leader increasingly detached from the realities of his crumbling empire. This forced relocation underscored the encroaching defeat and the narrowing scope of Hitler's territorial control. By this point, Hitler's strategic focus shifted westward, anticipating a new German offensive through the Ardennes. This prompted his move from Berlin to the Western Front headquarters, known as the Eagle's Nest, on December 11, 1944. The new location symbolized a desperate attempt to reverse the tide of the war, showcasing the leader's determination to hold ground against the Allied forces. However, the Eagle's Nest sojourn was short-lived, lasting from December 1944 to January 1945. During Hitler's stay at the Eagle's Nest, the grim reality of Germany's military situation became increasingly evident. The failure of the last offensive in the Ardennes, a desperate attempt to reverse the course of the war, highlighted the incapacity of the German army to execute significant operations. This setback underscored the exhaustion of Germany's military resources and signaled a turning point in the conflict. The situation worsened as the Red Army initiated a massive attack on the Vistula on January 12, 1945. This offensive led to the complete collapse of the Eastern Front, marking a devastating blow to the already weakened German forces. Faced with this dire development, Hitler was compelled to abandon the Eagle's Nest. As Hitler moved between different lodgings in Berlin amid intensified bombing raids, the city itself became a battleground. The once mighty Nazi capital was now under siege, and catastrophic events unfolded as Allied forces closed in. Hitler's itinerant lifestyle mirrored the chaos that had engulfed the entire nation. By late January, Hitler sought refuge in the underground bunker beneath the Reich Chancellery in Berlin. This fortified complex became the epicenter of his final days. It was here that he spent 2.5 months isolated from the outside world and ensconced in a deteriorating situation. On January 30th, in a radio address, Hitler sought to reassure the German people that they would overcome the crisis. Despite the grim reality unfolding on the Eastern Front, he projected an air of confidence in his words, attempting to maintain a facade of resolve. However, the military situation painted a different picture as Zhukov's vanguard units swiftly approached the Vistula River, a mere 70 kilometers from Berlin. As the Red Army closed in on the German capital, the proximity of enemy troops intensified the gravity of the situation. Joseph Goebbels, the Minister of Propaganda, clung to the hope that Hitler's public appearances could boost morale among the beleaguered German population. Recognizing the psychological impact of leadership in times of crisis, Goebbels urged Hitler to engage in public events to demonstrate strength and determination. However, Hitler, aware of the dire military circumstances and concerned about his deteriorated appearance, initially resisted the idea of public appearances. His reluctance stemmed from both a pragmatic assessment of the military reality and personal vanity. Hitler was mindful of the lack of positive messages that could be conveyed and the impact of his visibly weakened state on public perception. Despite Hitler's reservations, Goebbels persisted in advocating for public events as a means to uplift the spirits of the German people. Eventually, Hitler reluctantly agreed, acknowledging the psychological importance of leadership in times of crisis. The propaganda minister, Joseph Goebbels, orchestrated a significant event at one of the 9th Army barracks, strategically positioned 60 kilometers from Berlin, but was vulnerable to relentless Allied air raids. The choice of location, while geographically close to the capital, underscored the challenges faced by German leadership in finding secure venues amidst the intensifying Allied assaults on German territories. On March 13, 1945, Hitler, surrounded by his entourage, embarked on a journey from Berlin to the chosen barracks. The careful planning of this trip included precautions against potential Soviet attacks, reflecting the heightened sense of vulnerability and the constant threat of encroaching Allied forces. The need for security measures highlighted the precariousness of the situation facing Hitler in the final months of the war. The primary objective of this meeting was twofold. Firstly, it aimed to provide Hitler with critical information about the front situation, offering insights from German army commanders on the ongoing military operations. The strategic importance of staying abreast of military developments was essential for Hitler, who clung to the hope of turning the tide despite the overwhelming odds against Germany. Secondly, the gathering at the 9th Army Barracks was orchestrated as a propaganda event. Goebbels, ever mindful of the psychological impact of public appearances, sought to project an image of unity and determination in the face of adversity. The presence of Hitler alongside military commanders was intended to convey a sense of solidarity and resolve, emphasizing that the German leadership remained steadfast despite the dire circumstances. The generals were met with a sight that left them profoundly unsettled: Hitler's physical condition, described as notably poor. As you can see, Hitler's left hand is uncontrollably shaking. The stark contrast from the once charismatic and vigorous leader to his visibly weakened state was a reminder of the toll that the war had taken on both the man and the nation, and wasn't a good sight for the soldiers. General Bussy, at the helm of the 9th Army, took the floor to present the dire situation unfolding on the Eastern Front. His account painted a grim picture, emphasizing the fragility of the defensive line and anticipating an impending and formidable Soviet onslaught. The reality presented was one of vulnerability, with German forces stretched thin and facing overwhelming odds against the advancing Red Army. In his address to the assembled generals, Hitler acknowledged the gravity of the situation. He underscored the imperative to defend the Oder line at all costs, portraying it as the last line of defense for the beleaguered German Reich. The desperation in this acknowledgement marked a departure from the earlier rhetoric of victory and invincibility, reflecting a leader increasingly aware of the impending collapse. Hitler's revelation that Germany's reserves were depleted and the available weapons and ammunition represented the last vestiges of resources laid bare the harsh truth: the once mighty military machine of the Third Reich was now operating on the brink of exhaustion. Despite these grim circumstances, Hitler sought to infuse a semblance of hope into the proceedings. He spoke of the imminent arrival of new weapons, wonder weapons, and how the war can still be won. He tried to make a narrative aimed at bolstering morale and fostering a spirit of resistance among the generals. However, these were all vastly delusions. I think most of the soldiers and generals knew it was over at this point. Following the meeting at the castle, Hitler made a departure that would be laden with symbolism. As he left the castle, he passed by cheering soldiers, perhaps a manifestation of the lingering devotion and loyalty that persisted among some segments of the German military despite the grim circumstances. However, this marked the conclusion of Hitler's last trip outside of Berlin and his last trip to the front line. In the subsequent weeks, Hitler retreated to the confines of his bunker in Berlin, where the final chapters of his life played out. The bunker, once a supposed fortress of safety, became a microcosm of the collapsing empire. Isolated from the external chaos, Hitler's world shrank to the concrete walls that surrounded him. Hitler made his last public appearance, a poignant event held to honor Hitler Youth members who had participated in the early combats of the Battle of Berlin. This event served as a solemn recognition of the youth who had been thrust into the heart of the war's brutality. As Hitler made his final appearance, the war was rapidly nearing its end. The Battle of Berlin was unfolding on the streets above the bunker, and the once mighty Nazi regime was unraveling. Hitler's public life, characterized by grand speeches and orchestrated events, reached its melancholic endpoint. In these last weeks, the bunker became the backdrop for the final act of Hitler's tragic narrative. The cheers of soldiers and the staged events were replaced by the grim reality of defeat and the sounds of battle raging just beyond the concrete walls. The war's end was imminent, and Hitler's retreat into seclusion mirrored the collapse of the empire he had sought to build, and now the war was over. As we reflect on the events discussed in this video, it's a stark reminder that war is a terrible thing. The decisions of one individual can shape the destiny of an entire nation and tragically lead to the loss of countless lives, even among their people. As we delve into the complexities of history, let's never forget the profound human cost of war. It's a somber truth that should motivate us to strive for peace, understanding, and a world where dialogue triumphs over destruction. And with that, we've reached the end of today's video. Your support means a lot to us, both here and on our other platforms. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button. It truly makes a difference for our channel. Take a moment to explore the links below for our Patreon and Instagram. Thank you for sticking around. We truly appreciate every one of you. Until next time, goodbye for now, and we look forward to seeing you in our future content.